Identifying values in the domain. Okay, we have the following problem. We have h of x is equal to x minus 3 squared. Uh, there is some actually functions that you got to be aware of. If the function is a fraction, you have restrictions over fractions. You have restrictions over square root. So your restriction over your fraction is you can't have any numbers over 0. So for instance, 4 over 0, that would not be possible. And as for the square root, you can't have any negative numbers beneath the square root sign. So those are two things you want to be on the lookout for. Now, this x minus 3 squared is not a fraction, nor is it a square root. So there is no restrictions on this. So I would say this could be all reals. And what do I mean by all reals? It could be any number that you can think of. So yes, this could be a 0. Yes, I could put a 3 in for the x. So what I mean 0 is that I could say x is equal to 0. I could say, x is equal to 3. I could say x is equal to 4. So it doesn't matter. So I could say 0 minus 3. I could say 3 minus 3, 4 minus 4, because all real numbers work. There is no restriction. They're not stopping you from using any number. So in this case here, the numbers they give you are 0, 3, and 4. They can all work for this problem here because it's not a fraction, it's not a square root. Those are the ones that have stipulations on certain numbers that you cannot use. Okay, now you have a fraction here. So here's your fraction, x plus 6 over 2. And like I told you before, you can't have this over 0. If you had, for instance, 6 over 0, that is not a fraction. That is impossible. That is a no solution. But see, the problem with this one is your x's are always going to the numerator. So you will never get a 0 on the bottom. See, if I take that negative 6, I'll say negative 6 plus 6 over 2. So that's going to be 0 over 2. So that's 0. That's okay. You can have 0. I could put a 0 in here, so I could say, 0 plus 6 over 2. Well, that's 6 over 2, and that becomes 3. That's okay. It's not a 0 as a denominator. Next one, I could put a 2 in there. 2 plus 6 over 2. Well, 2 plus 6 is 8. 8 divided by 2. 8 divided by 2 is 4. So nothing gave me this. This is what you have to be on the lookout for a fraction, and this is what you want to stay away from. Nothing gave me a 0 as a denominator. So again, all these numbers will work. So in the domain, yes. So in the domain is what works, not domain is what does not work. So what works, what does not work. Okay, now we have a square root. So the square root you want to stay away from is any number, any negative numbers you put inside. So I can say x equal to negative 6, x equal to negative 3, and x equal to 3. I do not want to get a negative number inside. So I'm going to say negative 6 for the x plus 3, and what happens is I get a negative 3. That is not possible. You cannot have negative, so that is a not. So the negative 6 is no good. Well, this time let's try the negative 3, see what happens. So right here I'm going to get negative 3 plus 3, and this is the square root of 0. Square root of 0 is fine. You just can't have a negative number in there. So yeah, the 0 is acceptable. So yes, that does work. Now what about the positive 3? So let's kick out the x and let's put in a 3. So we'll say 3 plus 3. Well, 3 plus 3 is a positive 6. That's fine, as long as you do not get a negative number like what I got here. Right there, that gave me a negative number, and this was no, or not. So no, that's not an answer, so that would be not in the domain. So only negative 3 and 3 would work. The negative 6 would not work. Okay, next one, you have x minus 4. Well, you have no fraction. You don't see a fraction here. You don't have a square root here. So in this case here, your answer is going to be all reals. And what does all reals mean? It can mean any number that you can think of. You can put in the negative 4. You can put in the 0. And you can put in the positive 4. There's nothing stopping you. The only ones that have some kind of restriction where you can't use certain numbers are fractions and square roots. Anything else is all reals, and it can be any number that you can think of. So the negative 4 will work, the 0 will work, and the positive 4 will work.